What's going on, everyone? Today, 59% of the S&P 500 closed up in the green, and the market made brand new all-time highs yet again, and there is a lot of stuff happening right now. Palantir stock basically crashed out of nowhere as their CEO announced that he will be selling $1.2 billion worth of shares. And there was also some Pentagon related news as well that isn't that great for this company, and we're going to dive deep into that. But at the same time, Microsoft had a pretty exciting quantum chip breakthrough, and we even had some pretty exciting action out of HIMSS, as we know from last week, which announced a new acquisition and sent their shares up by over 17% on the day. Apple also released a new product, and we also have important information to cover related to the FOMC minutes report today. There's a lot going on right now, and there's some pretty good setups in the works, so definitely make sure to stick with us all the way until the end. But besides that, Tom, let's not waste any time and let's get right to it.
Yeah, those all-time highs were amazing to see today. Traders have been really waiting to see if the SPY would get this good breakout going, and we started to see that start to take hold today, but there were a few stocks that really stole the spotlight, I would say, from this market, making the new highs. And firstly, Palantir, Mike, with the crazy headlines at the end of the day. Oh my gosh, we have headlines out here with Alex Karp, the CEO, planning to sell $1.2 billion worth of this stock. That is a pretty crazy thing to say. Obviously that's a lot of money, Mike. And number two, anytime a CEO sells a lot of money, especially just shares of a company, it garners a lot of attention. We've talked about this a lot before with NVIDIA, and sometimes that'll cause a short-term pullback with this stock. And on top of this, there's even more news where it looks like Trump came out today and said that the Pentagon needs to prepare for 8% budget cuts each year for the next 5 years, which is pretty important. And I guess technically Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said this, but at the end of the day, the Trump admin has been cutting back spending quite a bit, and it looks like that is it's hurting Palantir a little bit in the short term.
No doubt, and as we all know, Palantir has been one of those stocks that has just been crushing it, not only over the past year, but the further you zoom out, the crazier it gets. And, as we said in yesterday's video, it's important to have a plan with your shares here. Palantir is one of the strongest moving stocks in the market in both directions, and the current news is not good no matter which way you look at it. Of course, the CEO selling, significant amounts of shares like this is bad by itself, but I would say what's arguably even more concerning is the decrease in Pentagon spending, not only for this year, but for the next 5 years. So it's definitely a rough thing to see, and I don't think that this is going to, hurt Palantir, too crazy much over the long term, but in the short term, it's really tough for the sentiment.
It definitely is, and it might hurt some of their future contracts. Let's say, if the Pentagon's obviously cutting back spending, they might not be too open to a lot of new contracts and stuff. And I guess that's just something to think about whenever you think about Palantir's growth, because a lot of people are like, well, hey, what is going to sustain Palantir? And I know a lot of the argument has been a lot of those military contracts and everything, and obviously more of them coming in. And of course, they have a lot of current ones, and they've been getting a lot, and I just think that that's definitely something that you need to look at. And whenever I look at Palantir in the short term, Mike, it just had this crazy gap up on the chart where it gapped from $85 up to $100. I'm definitely going to be watching it over the next couple of days. Right where it gapped up, it formed support at 99 to 100, and that $100 mark is definitely going to be a big psychological level that I think a lot of traders are going to be watching very closely.
No doubt. I would say $100 is the most important level for this stock, but I also, want to emphasize to check out that $110 to $109 area, as this has been a major support zone for the month of February. So definitely keep that in mind. The stock has bottomed off of this level multiple times, basically including today as well, which shows that this support is still active. So if we do see a break below this area, that would be a rough area for this stock to give up. in a perfect world, I would love to see like a pop back up to like that 116 area or maybe a little bit higher for like a better short opportunity. But as we know with the, stocks as crazy and as volatile as Palantir, you just have to adjust with the flows and new information as it comes in. But definitely keep this one close on watch.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is it's crazy volatile right now as well. So just be prepared for that. Obviously, as short-term traders, there might be situations where, like, let's say some pullbacks might like wipe out stop losses and stuff like that. So just definitely account for some of the crazy volatility that we're probably going to be seeing with Palantir over the next couple days. And Mike, I know that we've heard a lot about quantum computing a lot over the past, I would say, few months, especially. We've been seeing a lot of companies like QBTS, QUB, and others popping up a lot recently. And today we started to see these companies explode intraday along with Microsoft. And I was sitting there scratching my head. I was like, where's the news for this? And then a few minutes later, we ended up seeing some reports coming out where Microsoft actually revealed their first quantum computing chip. Now, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this. The Majorana or Majorana 1. It sounds very interesting, Mike. They've spent over 2 decades researching this, and obviously it's their first quantum computing chip. But something that I thought that was extremely important with quantum computing is that everybody's talking about, like, hey, quantum computing, we're really far away from that. We're not even going to be able to use that in the short term. There was actually a really good quote today where they ended up coming out and they said that there's a lot of speculation that we're decades off from this, but they said that they believe it's more like years. So I think that that's a really good quote and just a great thing to hear. And of course, Mike, whenever a company as big as Microsoft announces a new chip, and especially when they call it a breakthrough, it has to be in the headlines.
And Tom, when it has that quantum computing hype in the headlines too, that makes a big deal as well, as we all know, because just a few months ago, like you mentioned, we had stocks like QBTS, QUBT, RGTI, IONQ, and a bunch of other ones literally skyrocketing by thousands of percent in some cases, and other cases just like multiple hundreds of percent. So like news like this definitely gets a lot of attention. And as we look at Microsoft stock right now, of course it moved pretty strongly off of this news, but at the same time it is closer to like the lower end of its like multi-month range. We can see it has some pretty big support right around this like $405 area, and it does have some pretty positive news in the short term. So if this news keeps getting more and more attention and Microsoft can, put some decent pressure on its recent highs, it definitely has potential. So either way, keep this one on watch. Whenever you have news like this, it's definitely worth watching.
I really like that support that you mentioned, and with the quantum hype, this could be exactly what they need to get this dip kind of bought up. And they had a big gap down recently with earnings, and I'm sure, Mike, we're going to see a lot of traders looking for that gap to fill up to around like that 440 mark. So just be ready for that overhead resistance, though. It's going to be a pretty fun target if it starts to get there. And Mike, I know we've talked a lot about HIMS recently, and it's been exploding to say the least. Today, they come out with even more news to keep themselves in the headlines. It's like they took a HIMS or something. They're up 17% today as they acquired a company that will kind of allow you to do blood testing and I would just say like testing at home, kind of like Quest Diagnostics and different tests of that caliber. And of course, Mike, with HIMS, they deal with so many things from like hair loss to like like Viagra type pills, and now they're getting into this. It's definitely a good sounding thing for them.
And you can't forget about the weight loss drugs too. HIMS is exploding on multiple different fronts, and this news is just like adding to that flurry of just momentum and just hype. And as we look at HIMS, the stock is skyrocketing right now. But at the same time, just because this news is good and just because the stock is skyrocketing doesn't make it a great buy now, especially considering how much it's already up over the past few weeks. I definitely think there's opportunity scalping it. So like, riding the uptrend with like, tight stop losses and like playing it intraday. But in like a longer term sense, I would not be surprised if better buying opportunities were made available.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Mike. It's getting to that point of being pretty overextended right now. And I'm kind of wondering, like, hey, like, when are they going to do a share offering or something, right? You see a lot of these companies that are growth companies, they might do like a share offering or something like that whenever they start to get to these crazy inflated prices.
Yeah, or maybe their CEO might even come out and announce a $1.2 billion share sale. But yeah, either way, keep a close eye on this one. It's great for short term trading, but if you're looking at it in a longer term sense, you might get a better deal if you wait. But moving on to some other important news of the day, Apple finally had their product launch event, Tom. So, what is going on here?
Yeah, I'm surprised the stock isn't moving more than it is, but they did announce their new, cheaper iPhone today, and it came out with a different name than people thought. We were thinking maybe SE4. People were also maybe looking for updates with the MacBook or the HomePod or HomePad, and we didn't see anything with that. But they did announce the new iPhone 16e, so that's going to be the new name of this one. And the cool thing about this, Mike, is that, well, I guess there's a couple cool things and one drawback, and I'll talk about that now. So the cool thing is that they have the Apple Intelligence, Apple's new AI, which is great. It also has the new A18 chip, which can pretty much run like all the apps and games that the expensive iPhones can run. Now, I will say, for them calling it their cheapest, most affordable iPhone, it comes in with a price tag of $599. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you think that's affordable or cheap.
Yeah, so Apple's iPhone sales have definitely been struggling a decent amount over the past few years, and I think we can definitely tell that by looking at its stock, especially relative to other big tech companies. On an annual basis from their most recent earnings report, their iPhone sales were down 1%. So it's obviously not a great thing to see. And they definitely have a lot of work to do here. So either way, keep a close eye on Apple. They have a lot of work to do, and we'll see if they can pull through. But moving on and looking at some action in the SPY today, we can't forget that there was an FOMC minutes report, Tom, and the market didn't mind that one bit, considering we made brand new all-time highs.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I'm going to actually point to the chart to where this FOMC minutes report came out on the SPY today. And it really is what helped fuel the SPY up to that new high. We broke through the 612.32 previous all-time high and ended up running up to around 613 to post that new high today. And I will say it, the Fed minutes did not really provide too much insight into what the FOMC participants were kind of thinking, Mike. I would say it was just right in line with what the market was expecting. They talked a lot about Trump's tariffs potentially impacting the economy, but more importantly, they really talked about rate cuts holding in the short term. They really want to see better progress on inflation and inflation starting to drop. And as we've known, Mike, from looking at inflation over the past month to few readings, it's been kind of upticking a little bit. So they're not really looking for rate cuts too much in the short term. And that was the main focus today. And I would say the market liked it because it was just exactly what people expected.
Exactly. Everyone keeps asking Powell, when are we getting these rate cuts? When are we getting these rate cuts? And he's like, guys, hold on. Like, we have Trump with this tariff situation going on, and inflation still isn't under control yet. And like you said, the market was totally fine with that news. So that's good to see. And, Tom, we're still super close to all-time highs. What are the most important levels to look at right now in both directions?
Yeah, 612 was a huge resistance in the past, and I'm definitely watching that as a solid resistance here today as well. And now that that resistance has broken, it's become support. So with this 612 area, I'm definitely going to watch this. If the SPY ends up running down below here tomorrow morning, I will look to become a little bit more bearish and maybe look for the next support, which I have at 611, and then another one right around 609.80 to 610, where the SPY had a lot of chop this morning at open and really failed to break out. Right now, I just have a lot of focus on these previous highs of days. Yesterday, we talked about watching 612 to 612.32 for a break. Today, that's right where the SPY had that really good momentum in the middle of the day and ended up getting that good breakout. For tomorrow, really keeping that focus on the high of day today, very close to 613.20 to 613.23 is going to be my main focus. But there's a lot of levels in the short term, and I would say it's more of a scalper's game right now, Mike, with all this good upside momentum.
Definitely. And of course, there's a lot of big action right now with individual stocks, whether you look at Palantir, HIMS, Microsoft, or any of the other ones that are moving in a strong way. So keep in mind, like, even if SPY isn't like moving in a way that is as crazy as we've seen over like the past few months, that's okay. Like, there's definitely other opportunities out there. So either way, keep that in mind. And SPY has been pretty strong, though, which is definitely good to see. Looking at the economic schedule for tomorrow, basically it's all clear, which is great. We do have some existing home sales data 30 minutes after open on Friday, but honestly, that's not really anything too crazy. And then shifting over into the earnings lineup, we do have a handful of companies set to report tomorrow, like Baba, Walmart, and Unity, all before the market opens. And then after close, we have Rivian, Block, and Newmont.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, Block and Newmont are definitely on my watch list. Even CCJ there tomorrow before open in the uranium sector. So there's a lot on the radar for tomorrow, Mike. Of course, Friday, there's really not too much there, which makes me happy, honestly. But with the earnings, definitely have your eyes on those. And I know that the China stocks have been moving quite a bit in the short term. Like, I cannot wait to see how Baba reports. They have been exploding. And on this recent run, it's kind of insane to say Baba is up over 60%. So this is going to be a big report for them to see, like, hey, are we going to continue this uptrend?
No doubt. Yeah, they've been moving in quite a strong way, and it's going to be interesting to see what this one does in the short term. So that one is definitely close on my radar. But besides that, Tom, let's jump right into some setups and predictions. A stock that is close on my radar is Hood, and it is to the downside. I know I covered this one in yesterday's video, and it fell a decent amount today, which was great to see. Looking at Hood, they are still fading lower in after hours right now, and they're still overextended in like a broader sense, as the stock is up multiple hundreds of percent over the past year, and we are seeing a pretty quick reversal in the short term. Looking at Hood, it is definitely on my bearish radar, as we do have some pivotal levels coming up around this like $56 area. The more pressure Hood puts on its low of day, the stronger the selling pressure we will see as more investors panic sell from a rapidly falling stock. Again, it still is pretty overextended in the broader sense as well, which does help, but Hood is definitely on my bearish radar.
Yeah, it looks pretty crazy. Is it starting to drop off, especially in after hours today? I mean, it's going to be a crazy open for this one tomorrow if it keeps moving like this tonight. But with my first play, I'm looking at Oxy back to the upside in the short term. I was looking at a lot of these oil plays, Mike, and I noticed that they were all moving very well here off of their recent lows, especially like Oxy, ZOM, and a few others. But whenever I look at OXY, it was definitely one of these more standouts today, being up 4.4% at close. And I really do just like that double bottom and overall base starting to form. So for the next like couple weeks to even like couple months, I'm really going to just watch for this base to continue to play out and for it to start to get a nice uptrend going off of this base. And in the short term, there's obviously a lot of good momentum there as we saw this morning. So I'll definitely be watching for possible scalps as the high of day from today breaks. We're all up around $52.20 as well. But I even am watching it for like the next couple months. There's a lot of opportunities with this oil sector if crude oil keeps popping the way it is.
No doubt, and this one's definitely on my radar as well. It had a great open, and even though it didn't close near its high of day, it still has a lot of momentum in general in the short term, which is great to see, so it is definitely close on watch. But another stock that is on the radar is Moderna in a bullish way. We just had a recent big money trade with this one, and while it didn't really do too much today, in a broader sense, when you zoom out, it still is at a very low point, and it is still holding that key $30 area of support from last week, which it reversed off of. Looking at Moderna, when you combine the recent $10.6 million big money play, the recent momentum, as well as just the broader overextension to the downside, it really presents a great reward to risk, in my opinion. Right now, the stock is at like $36 a share, and let's say someone put a stop loss slightly under like that $30 support, that is your risk in this scenario where in the event the stock does continue its short-term uptrend, you can put profit targets anywhere up to, 44 or even just below 50 or even higher if you want to push it more. But either way, I definitely like the reward to risk here, and it's close on watch.
Overall, I really like that lower support you mentioned at $30, and the reward risk definitely does line up well also, and that big money play is pretty convincing. $10 million. We don't always get big money plays that are that large, but I'll definitely be watching Moderna in the short term. With my next setup, I'm looking at Johnson & Johnson. I'm looking for a good breakout on the daily chart here. So there's been a good support on Johnson & Johnson where it's been bouncing a lot around 143 to 145, and you can see those marked out here on those circles at the bottom of the chart. There's been also an upper level to this range where there's been a lot of rejections between like 164 to 170. Overall, I really like 164 as a possible target, but even like $160 is a big psychological level to watch for in the short term before we get there. And with it breaking this recent resistance, I'm going to be watching for a continuation tomorrow, but as we start to break out, you have to watch for this sell wall at 160. You guys can see here on the Bookmap, there's a lot of sellers stacked up there around 21,000. This is Johnson & Johnson. It's not Apple or Tesla. You won't see like stacks of millions of shares probably like you would on those other stocks, but this is a big sell wall nonetheless, so keep your eyes on $160 as it breaks out. That could be a good potential target for the next couple days. But overall, Johnson & Johnson has a lot of good momentum. And I'm just going to be watching for a good short-term scalping opportunity to the upside.
There we go, and shout out to Bookmap. So sounds good there, Tom, and I will also keep this one on the radar. But besides that, we are all clear for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have Spotify to the upside.
SPOT, pretty insane. Look at this one on the daily chart, holding support and starting to run a little bit higher. But if they're able to break out above $642, right around where it triple top today, then keep watching it to the upside. Let's go ahead and just say 643 because in after hours it broke that by just a little bit. The main thing with this one though is to make sure that that momentum is there.
All right, with the next one, we have Roblox to the downside.
RBLX, pretty bad pullback by them today. If they break under 63.25, then keep watching them down. This is a pretty big recent low, and if they break under there, there could be a pretty good sell-off coming in.
Alrighty, and then with the last one, we have Snow to the downside.
Yeah, poor Snowflake ended up falling off quite a bit today as well. If they break under 185.70, a pretty good support from the past few days, then keep watching them down as well. That was a pretty bad sell-off, especially around market close.
All right, sounds good. So we have Snow and Roblox on the radar for potential moves lower, and then we have Spotify on the radar for a potential move higher. These stocks are on watch for potential continuations if and only if they break through the levels listed. The stronger and more consistent these stocks move, the better the setups become. As always, have stop losses, protect your position, and then adjust with the trend changes as they happen, as always, right? But besides that, Tom, it is now about that time for today's $600,000 big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol KRYS. Today, the big money bought the 175 strike call options that expire on March 21st of 2025. This is a biotechnology company, and the big money is definitely getting bullish here. When we zoom out, this company has definitely been doing very well over the past few years, and they're also running with a good amount of momentum in the short term as well off of their recent earnings report. Looking at these call options, they are at the money, and they have like enough time to them, but not like a ton of time to them. They expire on March 21st, so it's about a month away. So the big money is expecting like a pretty decent move here pretty soon.
Yeah, it looks like whenever this company has earnings and they have some of these pretty crazy moves like we've seen in the past, there has been pretty good continuations for a few days. after those earnings reports happen. And we saw that today where they reported earnings. They had this insane move where they ended up running up like 12%. I almost said they gapped up, but it's almost like they did in a way. But either way, the earnings definitely got some good buying pressure to come in. I also like this whole setup where they're bouncing off support and holding like that 145 level in a pretty decent way as well, and coming back towards resistance. So overall, pretty crazy setup. It is a fairly risky big money play, I'd say, given that it's given that there's under like or just about 1 month left to this. But overall, Mike, I mean, pretty advantageous considering that it's moving up with such good hype from the earnings. And like I said, like when it starts to trend, this one can trend for a couple weeks at a time sometimes.
Yeah, and we all know how crazy biotechs are too. All it takes is some optimistic news or even in some cases analyst coverage, and they can move quite a bit. So either way, keep this one close on watch. And as a side note, if you guys are not already subscribed, definitely consider obliterating that subscribe button. It takes us hours to make these videos, and we cover all of the most important news, big money trades, chart setups, earnings, important events, and everything you have to know about the stock market in like 20 to 25 minutes or less. Sometimes we go longer than that if there's a lot to cover, but definitely subscribe so you can get our videos recommended to you more often. But we also have to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Eric R. in the StockedUp Discord, who had some nice $2,600 gains with some Microsft call options today. So huge shout out to you, Eric, and keep on rolling. There is a lot of action in the market right now in multiple different senses. We're seeing a lot of great price action all around. So there is a good amount of opportunity right now. If you guys have not already used Bookmap, I don't know what to say besides you're missing out. It shows you key levels and it works for every stock. So if you haven't already used it, definitely consider it. It's a great tool to have in your arsenal, and it shows you key support and resistance levels among many, many, many other things that are very, very useful. So definitely check it out. You do save if you are a StockedUp viewer with the first link in the description and the comments down below. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.